Ms. Hanson, go ahead and take it away.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 294, version 0.6, Department of Transportation Efficiency Study. This bill draft was requested at the committee's September meeting. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 begins on page 1, line 9. Subsection A on page 1, lines 11 and 12 through page 3, line 26, provides an appropriation of $250,000 from the general fund to the governor's office for purposes of conducting an efficiency study of the Department of Transportation in accordance with this subsection. Page 2 and 3 outline what the study is required to do. The study must be conducted by an independent third party, be conducted in consultation with this committee, evaluate the Department of Transportation's rules, policies, and procedures, review the Department of Transportation's staffing and resources and the distribution and number of staff and resources around the state, determine whether efficiencies or cost savings can be gained, provide recommendations for the Department of Transportation to achieve the efficiencies identified, provide a preliminary report to this committee, the governor, and the Department of Transportation not later than October 1st, 2025, provide a final report including any recommendations to this committee, the governor, and the Department of Transportation not later than December 1st, 2025. The staff comment on page 3 provides that the committee may wish to consider specifying what efficiencies the committee wants to study. These may include cost savings, reduced personnel, increased services, or quicker project completion. Subsection B on page 4, lines 1 through 8, provides that this appropriation is for the period beginning with the effective date of this act and ending June 30th, 2026. Section 2 on page 4, lines 10 through 13, provide an immediate effective date, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for our staff? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Fairly straightforward concept. Next up, we have YDOT. Your turn, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Darren Westby, Director of YDOT. And thank you again to LSO for the great draft of the bill, of something that we've talked quite a bit about over the last several meetings. I just want to reiterate, and I think I've talked to a lot of you about our willingness to participate in this study, and we too, if there's efficiencies to be found, we'd like to have them and try to make those things. We do that on a regular basis as we go through every project. We try to find more efficient ways to do things. So I think it's always a good opportunity to have an outside group come in and help. We do it with our finances annually to ensure that we're audited properly. So again, we're not overly concerned about having somebody else come in, take a look, see if we can do something better. So with that, I definitely welcome the study. Just 2 points of concern is we've done studies in the past and they're not cheap. I'm a little concerned about the general fund appropriation amount not being probably enough. And then my second concern is the data delivery being less than a year today, about 11 months to get that study at least preliminarily laid out to you, and then final within a year and a month from now. And so knowing it took me almost a year just to know all the 47 programs that we have. I couldn't imagine another outsider and a consultant team coming in and diving into all those programs and everything that we're looking at within a year. That's my only concern, Mr. Chairman, of we, regardless of what we do, we want to do it right. And we want to make sure it's a product that we can all be proud of and use going into the future. And so those are the two things that I'm a little bit concerned about.
Okay, any questions for the department? Representative Alderman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we did gosh, I just sounded like Senator Scott. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. When we did the efficiency study for the government at large, the Alvarez study. What we found in that study was that we needed to spend more money to be more efficient. And when you look at your organization, do you see pieces where you actually need more money in order to create efficiencies within your organization?
Mr. Chairman, I'll tee it up, and if I miss anything, I'll let Dennis clean up on the answer. One real quick example is right now we're maintaining because we have only so much funds and we have so many miles of roads to maintain. To do it right, if we had more money, right? If we had more money, we would probably do a cost-benefit analysis to see whether it makes more sense to do a reconstruct of a road as opposed to just maintaining the surface. Just putting a nice black coat over it with new stripes makes everybody feel good, and it might extend the life for about 6 to 7 years. A total reconstruct with a brand new resurface could last 20 to 21, 22 years. So from a cost-benefit analysis, it's going to cost a lot more money to do that reconstruct, but then, bless you, but we may not be back on that same stretch of road for 20 to 21 years. So it's a benefit to the public not being under construction every 7 years on every stretch of road. From a financial standpoint, you've heard a lot about the inflationary costs that keep going up every year. Well, if we spend X number of dollars today to reconstruct a portion of a road in today's dollars, or we shave, mill and overlay the same section of road for a much smaller number, but I have to come back in 7 years, but every 7 years, the inflation of every year catches up, and it may, I shouldn't say may, it should probably in the right works of projects would probably do a great service to do a cost-benefit analysis. We do them, but I think we've eliminated doing them in the last probably 10 years because they're, at the end of the day, we don't have the money to do it, the reconstruct. So there would be one example of where it would potentially cost more money to be more efficient, but at the end of the day, long-term, we'd probably be well ahead, not only on a product delivery, level of service, as well as customer satisfaction.
Well covered, Mr. Chairman.
Any further, go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
So, Director, I completely 100% agree with you that I feel like the general fund appropriation on this is probably subpar for what we're looking to get. Not being in control of an agency day in, day out, and seeing these types of things and knowing what these types of studies actually look like. It's been a while since I was involved in one of these. What would you say is an accurate representation of what you guys believe in order to get the, I think you could go get it for this money, right? But you're not going to get the output we're looking for and or the output you're looking for. So what do you feel is a fair representation for the output that not only you're looking for, but based off of what you've heard from us over the past 2 years, what we're looking for? What would you value a study like that at?
Again, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I'll take the first swing and then let Dennis clean up. The dye management study that we did back in 2019, I believe was 680,000, sorry, I had transposed those numbers. It'll now be 860,000. No. Flash forward 3 or 4 years, that 680 figure probably is not going to be 680. And it was about a year and a half study. So it's to get something in the range of the depth and breadth and scope and detail that I think we all would be proud of a document. It's going to be north of $500,000 for sure.
Okay, so if I heard you that correctly, Director, it sounds like due date would be better, sometime at the end of fiscal year 26 then. or sometime during that summer of 2026. And then that would give us a chance, if you need the legislature to do something, for example, to implement whatever the findings may be, that would give us a chance to present something at a general session as opposed to a budget session. May work out better anyways. So does that, as far as, I think you gave us a pretty clear answer for what the appropriation should be if we move forward. You think July 1st, 2026 would be a good due date, and forget about the initial report, just say the final report due by July 1st, 2026, would that work?
Mr. Chairman, I think given a year and a half, I mean, once we start feeling the comfort level of this bill, we will probably run some RFIs and start getting RFP drafted and getting it ready just in case the bill passes. We're hitting the street as soon as it's effective. We want to give this consulting group the best chance of getting us what we want. So trying to be as effective as possible with that. From a financial standpoint, 750 is what my CFO is thinking.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, in the business world, we often provide incentives to staff that comes up with cost-cutting ideas. Do you have anything like that, Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thank you for that. Yeah, we have consistently put it out to the crew, not necessarily incentives. I don't know that we have incentives per se, but we do require our staff to come up with efficiency saving ideas and put them forward. Might be simplistically recognizing them, in our interchange, giving them an attaboy on that, just some recognition. I know in the past, there was a program, a cost savings program. I think the state did it as a higher level from the governor's office perspective, if there was any cost savings measures that, the agency would be able to celebrate in that success. But we're constantly trying to improve our own internal efficiencies, whether it's turn the lights off when you're not in a room, change out all the fluorescent lights to LED, all those things that are really low-hanging fruit. I mean, it shouldn't take an efficiency study to come up with those simple ideas, but those are the things that we always do. But this, I think, is going to be a little bit more high level on project selection, return on investment type decision-making, making sure that we have the appropriate square footage versus the amount of miles that we have to maintain. All those things are going to have to come into play.
Representative Pendergrass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may or may not have an answer for this, but I would like to have some idea how many entities are out there that might be capable of performing this service for us. And is there any conceivable way that we might be able to put this up to a bid and get those entities competing against each other to try to hold the cost?
Mr. Chairman, since this was on the docket, we just came back from, a couple of us went out to Philadelphia for the annual Board of Directors meeting of the AASHTO, American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, acronym Central. And I did ask a lot of the consultants out there, would you be interested and able and capable and all those? And there's a handful of those national bigger firms that can do this type of work with the experience of not necessarily this type, but definitely can spin up on it. As for competing, I'm not 100% sure on a professional services contract if competing for the best price is how professional services contracts are awarded. They're based off of qualifications. Are you capable of doing it? And then they can submit a proposal, and if you don't like it, you don't accept it, right? But I don't know if putting a price on that it's not like a construction job where you get the low bid. But great question. I appreciate that.
Any further questions, committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Director Westby, thanks for coming, guys. Quick question, would you be amenable to, say we make this guy a trigger bill that if either source of funding comes through, we do a one-time shot at that, take it out to pay for this thing and hook it together. So if they both go through and they make it and you get this dump truck load of funding that we were talking about earlier, we just take it out of that and we do the study, and then hopefully that'll be a nice carrot to get everything through for you guys.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I think that's a friendly conversation. I think, I don't know that I can really get into if then that, but definitely would have the ability to not feel like I'm robbing the roads to perform the study, if that was the regard to that level. But at the end of the day, if it's going to help us be successful maintaining the funds that we're hopefully going to get out of the last two bills, and being able to utilize this document and the tools that might come with it to be more successful down the road, that's why we're amenable and not really running from this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions, committee? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay, any public comment? Anybody online? Okay, anybody in the room? Okay, looks like public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, moved by Representative Wiley, second by Representative O'Hearn. Okay, we had a couple of suggestions for amendments, so we'll just go ahead and get going here. On page 1, any amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
can we just kind of do a constructive thing here so I don't lose my place and LSO can take care of me like they most often do?
Sure.
Can we let's create a trigger for this bill that if either of the two sources of funding that we put through earlier today goes through, that this will be contingent upon that, funded through YDOT and that funding source for a one-time efficiency study at not to exceed $750,000. Also, those two things to be a part of that.
Okay. So if I understand the amendment, change the appropriation from 250,000 to 750,000, change it from the general fund to the highway fund, and make the entire bill contingent upon passage of one of the two other bills we did, the funding bills. Yet to
Correct,
be
Mr. Chairman,
numbered.
just
Okay.
not to exceed
Right. Oh, not to
750,
exceed.
so it
Okay.
could come in under.
Right, fair enough. Okay. Okay. Any discussion, committee?
Mr. Chairman, just a question for Talise on this. Do you have any construction issues with that, since these are not numbered, and we don't have any of that up yet? I'm guessing this will take longer to get through that process, and this would certainly be numbered after that, depending upon the chairman and I's direction. But I just want to make sure that LSO is okay with that construction of that language.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that I could work that out, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion carries. Okay, anything on page 2? Take special note of the staff comment. Right now, we just have a fairly generic, direction to determine efficiencies. Do we want to get any more specific than that, committee? Or is we good to go with that, Representative Smith?
I would like to make an amendment that they send out an anonymous survey to all the employees of YDOT of inefficiencies that employees see. So then it would give the people that is doing the study a direction and where to look as well.
Okay, moved and seconded to add a requirement that the study include anonymous employee feedback. Okay. Okay, any further discussion on that? Oh, go ahead, Director, come on up.
Mr. Chairman, I know this is probably not relatively appropriate. Just for clarification in my mind, we do an employee satisfaction survey every 2 years. This is a separate survey to talk about efficiencies? Very good. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I guess, to make sure that I understand this correctly, you're also saying, Representative Smith, that you would like the contractor to do this survey and reach out directly as well, not the department,
That is
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Very good. Any further questions or discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Any further amendments? Page 3, we get the discussion about the timeline. Anybody have any amendments there?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr.
I guess we'll
Co-Chairman.
go ahead and help out there. Think that we need to push this back exactly 1 year from the date that we have here. I think that will give us, so if we just to do a conforming amendment to, on page 3, line 18, move that to October 1st of 2026. Even October 1st is kind of an interesting one, and then the only reason I find that interesting is that's kind of the fiscal year end for the feds. So that kind of helps out there, but that also gives one additional meeting. It might be beneficial for this committee to hear that earlier. And so I'm also thinking maybe if we push that back to September 1st, that would give enough committee time, 2 meetings to potentially flesh this out with any recommendations that come out of that. And for that matter, push it all the way back maybe to July 1 of 2026. So those would be my considerations. I don't know if anybody wants to actually make the motion on one of those.
Right, and for additional consideration is would the preliminary report be necessary if we're giving that amount of time? Or could they just give us a report at the end? Because I think the reason why we have a preliminary report is we're rushing to do just what you said and get something ready potentially for the budget session in 27. But if we give them a whole nother year, I just wonder if that's, do we even need a preliminary report? And we can just say that, you know, deadline is whatever it is, July, August.
You know what, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go ahead and make a motion here in 2 parts. So first part is going to be page 3, lines 15 through 18, strike completely. And then on lines 20 through 26, the change there would be not later than July 1, 2026.
Okay, moved and seconded to eliminate the preliminary report and just have a final report by July 1st of 2026. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries. Okay,
Mr.
go
Chairman,
ahead, Representative Wiley.
sorry, you're running too fast on me sometimes.
All right, no, that's good, good, good.
Can we go back to page 2 and add
Absolutely.
a Romanette for something with the language of cost-efficient engineering or construction practices, and then internal YDOT procedures, so we can look at efficiencies on how we design things and how we construct things, and where we could find cost savings there.
And to clarify, you're talking about, are you concerned about over-engineering projects then, or is it the methodology they use to determine which projects get funded and which ones don't?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, a little bit all of the above. So we can look at common practices within the construction industry to where we could save money on how to construct something with the same outcome of it being a safe and sound product. And secondarily, to make sure that within YDOT, you know, we're using all the practices of up-to-date technology with engineering and moving forward with that. I think there's cost savings in both of those ideas.
Okay. Okay, right, so as long as we'll, okay, and hopefully we'll give staff leeway to do what makes sense. Okay, do I hear a second on that? Okay, moved and seconded to offer a little bit more direction as to what exactly type of efficiencies we want. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? That motion carries. Any further discussion, amendments on the entire bill? Direct, go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman, then we'll get to the director.
Yeah, we need to, Mr. Co-Chairman, page 4, we do need to change out the date on the appropriation, that we don't want to revert anything on June 30 if we're not getting anything until July 1st. So I would say revert that back. It's kind of weird to revert anything in the middle of a biennium. I'd say December 31st. Well, no, we could do it on the federal call frame there, if the director and CFO would be. Mr. Director, what are your thoughts? I saw you come up, you heard me talking about it, and you backed down, but what are your
Well,
thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I was just going to come up and give you the date issue, and you picked up on that quickly. CFO picked up on the reversion piece. If it's a highway fund, it doesn't revert it anyway. So if the bill goes through with the trigger and it's highway funded,
Then we don't
not
have any
general
reversion.
funded, then that part becomes relatively moot.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I will just motion there. Thank you, and I didn't even think about that. So I will go ahead and move that we strike lines 1 through 8 on page 4.
Okay, your motion, is there a second? Okay, moved and seconded to strike the reversion language as it does not apply to highway funds. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
You might just want to keep the language that the appropriation shouldn't be used for any other purpose. You might want to just keep that part and delete the reversion part.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Jeez, please. You look bad.
Is that friendly?
We're getting a.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis Byrne, CFO with YDOT. As I understand the trigger is directly connected to the new revenue that would be coming in. So if we were to actually be able to do this efficiency study for less than $750,000, I think we would want the rest of the money to go towards the roads. So I don't think that we want to keep either component, at least as I understand the discussion. Policy decision, but just something to consider.
Mr. Chairman, that actually does make sense because the money's just going to be sitting inside of the highway fund. They're already restricted for what they can and can't use that for. So I'll stick with my original motion.
Okay, sounds good. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That motion carries. Any further discussion or amendments on this piece of legislation? Okay, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote on 25 LSO 0294, Department of Transportation Efficiency Study as amended. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Furphy?
Aye.
Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Representative Wiley? Co-Chairman Brown?
No, yeah, aye.
Chairman Boner?
Aye.
14 aye.
That's 2, committee.
Yeah. Good work on that one. May allow improvements to the bill. There we go. Okay, next up, we have 25 LSO 259, non-citizens driver's license and ID revisions. Go ahead, Ms. Hanson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney also presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 259, version 0.5, non-citizen driver's license and ID card revisions. This bill draft was requested at the committee's September meeting. Section 1 begins on page 1. Page 2, lines 2 through 11, amend the statute dealing with the contents of a driver's license. Page 2, lines 8 through 11, creates a new paragraph 4, which provides that the license issued to a person who is not a United States citizen, but who has lawful status as defined by Title VI, Section 37.3 of the Code of Federal Regulations shall state not a United States citizen. The staff comment on page 2 to the top of page 3 provides the language of the definition of lawful status as defined by that Code of Federal Regulations referenced in the language. Page 3 through lines 6 through 11 amend the statute dealing with the contents of identification cards. The new subsection B provides that identification cards issued to a person who is not a United States citizen but who has lawful status as defined by Title VI, Section 37.3 of the Code of Federal Regulations shall state not a United States citizen. The staff comment on the bottom of page 3 provides that the committee may wish to consider whether to add any of the following phrases to the driver's license and identification cards. The first is not valid for official federal purposes, which would be for accessing federal facilities, boarding federally regulated commercial aircrafts, and entering nuclear power plants. The other one is not acceptable for federal identification or voting purposes. And the third one is not valid for federal identification, voting, or federal public benefits purposes. The staff comment also highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether to require these driver's licenses and identification cards to be a distinctive color, different than licenses issued to persons who are not United States citizens. Section 2 on page 4, lines 6 and 7 provides that this act shall apply to licenses and identification cards issued on and after July 1st, 2025. Section 3 on page 4, lines 9 through 11 provides that not later than July 1st, 2025, the Department of Transportation shall promulgate any rules necessary. Section 4 on page 4, lines 13 through 21 provides a split effective date, with sections 1 and 2 being effective July 1st, 2025, and sections 3 and 4 being effective immediately. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next up, we have WIDOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Deputy Director with WIDOT, and I did bring the brains of Misty up here today. Real quickly on the bill, I do think one of the important things to point out is that the bill will not procedurally change how we operate today. So as far as all of the verifications for statuses of individuals applying for ID cards or driver's licenses with the state of Wyoming, this will not procedurally change how we do business. So anything that we're doing now will be done afterwards. Really what we're talking about is changing the look of the physical credential. And from a timing perspective, it may be a slightly antiquated way of dealing with the issue in that card, when it's printed, is really, valid. It's a snapshot in time. The status of that individual could change. They could become a citizen during that time period, maybe didn't come back in and get a new credential. So I think there's some technological advances that are 18 months, 12 months down the pipe here that actually might come into place that would actually make this easier for us. I think looking into the staff comment there that's on page 3, one thing I will point out is that most of those statements that are there on lines, say 15 through 32, are really for states that offer credentials that are non-Real ID compliant. And this body did actually a very smart thing back in like 2009. And you guys took the direction of, we don't issue a credential that doesn't meet the Real ID requirements. So I don't know that any of those things would be necessary, because we will not issue a document that does not go to somebody who has lawful presence here. And one of the things that then document does do is you can get on an airplane with that document. So again, it is valid for federal purposes because we've done the federal check on those individuals. So I think as far as the staff comment goes, I don't know that it would be necessary if we move forward. It certainly is some policy considerations for you guys to make. And with that, the only other things are the implementation timelines might be a little bit tight, only because it would require a complete redesign of the card in order to change the verbiage. But there's even some other ways that we could get around that if the committee wanted to talk through it. And with that, certainly Misty could offer any sort of information you guys want as far as what the procedure for verifying the lawful presence here is. I think that's probably very important and germane to the bill.
That's going to be one of the questions I asked if you didn't go over it. So yeah, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Boner. Misty Zimmerman, Driver Services Program Manager. I'm just gonna, if you give me a little bit of latitude, I'll kind of walk you through what our processes are. So we issue only Real ID compliant cards. You are required to provide proof of identity, proof of legal presence, proof of social security, and proof of residency in the state of Wyoming. As we walk through those things, there are different documents that we can take. All of our, with the Real ID Act, when we were adopted that in 2009, all of my examiners are trained in fraudulent document recognition. So you walk through that process. If you are a non-US citizen or have presented something that is not a US passport, not a birth certificate, we also do a secondary check with the United States Customs and Immigration Service. That credential is only issued for the time period that that person is legally allowed to be here, right? So that legal presence, so that legal lawful presence is taken into consideration. That's before that hard copy of that credential is ever even produced. So we take that into consideration as we walk through that process. Once you've proved that valid legal presence here, then the document or the credential is issued, whether that's for an ID card or a driver's license. If you are a temporary resident, there is an attribute, we call it an attribute in our system that is stored in the system. If you are a permanent resident, there is an attribute that is stored in the system. That attribute is also passed off to the Secretary of State's office through our daily interface in WyoReg so that they can validate that. And I'll let them speak to that process, but that information is contained in the system. As we move forward with modernization, you guys have heard us talk about this process, through the last several months. We think that the technology will be available to do this in a like right there, real time. Those scenarios where we're looking at proving this and ensuring that we've got those US citizens for the purposes of voting privileges.
Any questions for YDOT?
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. What does this barcode do on the back of our ID?
Go ahead.
Says whether your color your hair.
Thank you.
Chairman Boner, Representative Wiley, I'm going to get a little driver's license geeky on you, if that's all right.
Perfect.
It's a PDF 417. It allows anybody, it's a scannable barcode that will bring back specific information to whomever has you can download an app and read and get that information from it. But again, it is only a snapshot of what is printed on the card at the time that that card was printed. So that information can't change as if your situation changes between the now and the next time you get the card. But it's things exactly what's on the front of your card, as well as your hair color, because you'll notice on that front of your card, we no longer have hair color. And then there's also a unique identifier on the back of the card that is that you got assigned the very first time you got a license in Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So, you're talking about efficiencies and kind of coming up to speed with modern technology and stuff. So at some point in time, instead of having to redesign everything, we could just take the ID, scan the ID, and all of this stuff that we're talking about for this bill would just pop up real time.
Again, on the PDF 417, that is it is only what is on the card at the time it was printed. Mobile DL, which we've also talked about. We've gotten the authority back in 2019 to do a mobile DL. Those types of things would provide real time, which is in our roadmap for our driver services in the future. As soon as we get our modernization project done, we're looking towards that, and that would be a real-time representation of what that is in our system at any given time.
Mr. Chairman, one more
Go ahead.
question. So what is the timeline on that again?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, our modernization project is scheduled to go live sometime next summer. And then we hope to have the mobile ID or mobile identification probably in 2026.
Mr. Chairman, I lied, one more question.
Okay. Last one.
So if we just hang tight and let you guys do it, within your means, we could save a whole bunch of money and not have to redesign these cards, and we'll have everything that we're asking for real time.
Go ahead.
Chairman Boner. I do think there are some technological advances that can maybe get us to that point with our modernization project, but we can discuss those as we walk down this road. But yes, that 2026 date would hopefully get us to a point where we have the mobile ID.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, so you're talking about like you having your driver's license on your phone potentially, is that from my constituent's point of view, would that be a possibility in addition or as a substitute for your physical driver's license? Is that what you're discussing there in about 2026? Or we say mobile ID, what is that?
Chairman Boner, I think it was 2019 that we came to the body and asked for the authority to do that. In addition to your physical credential, it does not require you to only have the mobile driver's license, but it is an option that citizens can do that would basically allow for real-time updates to that credential, either identification card or driver's license, in addition to your physical credential.
Okay, so you still have your physical credential no matter what?
Correct.
Is there anything in this bill that would gum up the works for your update for the next couple of years? Anything in this bill is problematic?
Chairman Boner, I think the timing, we're running into some issues with timing is part of this bill presents some problems.
Okay.
But not as it relates to our mobile driver's license in the future.
All right, thank you. Any further questions, committee? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Chairman. What's the cost of this? Getting back to what Representative Wiley was talking about. Well, what are we talking about for implementing this driver's license? Or not a United States citizen driver's license?
Chairman Boner, Representative O'Hearn, it's very difficult for me to say because it would require us to redesign our card, and there's very limited real estate on that card, so we'd have to move some things around. In 2019, we were in the process of redesigning our card when this body decided to add the medical alert, which is basically a very similar thing. It passes some type of flag to the system that tells the card to put a medical alert on it. We would have something similar, I would assume, technologically to do this. That was about a $12,500 project for if it was done at post-implementation, pre-implementation of the redesign, and post it was like $25,000. Back in 2023, the DCI came through and was looking at an enhanced concealed firearm permit. The CR, the change request, came through at about $21,000 for that. Last year, it was a little bit less significant, was with just the change to the CFP that they were requesting, and that was about $6,500. So it's a pretty big range. It all depends on level of work with our vendor.
And that's one-time cost, to be clear, right? Okay, well, thank you. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the suggestions that LSO brought was perhaps a distinctive color for this type of card. Does that also present a challenge in redesign?
Chairman Boner, Representative Pendergraft, yeah. Any change made to our current card design would require a redesign. And in fact, a change to the color of the substrate of the card would be significantly more than a change to simply the personalization that's done separately.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not necessarily thinking of changing the entire color of the card, but perhaps the printing. It seems like some green printing could be changed to orange or something.
Chairman Boner, Representative Pendergraft, our cards are produced in such a manner that anything that you see that is black on the card is the only thing that is personalized. It's called personalization. Everything else that you see on that card, any color, anything that is built into the substrate of the card. And so you can't simply just change the banner or Wyoming banner to a different color without truly redesigning the entire substrate of the card.
Okay, Representative Stivar, you had a question? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have, because I've talked to some people that used to work for the Department of Family Services and stuff, and at one time, if they were a non-citizen, they had an ID card that said non-citizen, is my understanding. I might be wrong, but when did we take that off our driver's licenses and RD cards, if that is the case?
Chairman Boner, Representative Stivar, currently our temporary residents on our driver's license do have a class-NR. And so that is indicated as only for your temporary residents, though it's not for the permanent resident on it. So, and as far as if it was there before and when it was taken off, I would have to do some research and find that out for you.
All right, thank you.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. Why couldn't you just put a hole punch on it? Why couldn't you take a hole puncher and knock a hole in it in a specific place and not have to go any $12,000 redesign, and it would identify a card? What would be a problem with that, I guess? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Boner, Senator Gould, typically that indicates that the license is no longer valid. So if you've come into our office and we put a stamp in it, a void stamp or a hole punch, law enforcement would then indicate that that would be, that's no longer a valid credential for identification purposes. So we typically don't like to make any marks or destruction on the card because it takes away the validity of the card.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, how many cards would there potentially be you're marking? Because I still don't know why you couldn't get a little heart punch or whatever, a different kind of punch to identify the card. But how many cards did we talk about in the state of Wyoming that fall into this category of a card with a non-resident that had a driver's license?
Chairman Boner, Senator Cole, we worked through trying to get some of that information for you, and I will provide that information to the committee. It's difficult sometimes with the or the permanent residence because it's not fully identifiable. But again, it goes back to that attribute that's added to the system that is then communicated through our files that go back and forth between the Secretary of State's office and WYDOT. Anytime you destruct or do any destruction to a card, it's going to indicate whether it's a heart, a void, a circle. Every jurisdiction has a different way to do it, but you cannot do any sort of destruction to the card and have it still remain valid.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. You're off the hot seat for now. All right, looks like we have the Secretary of State's office here. You want to say anything, Mr. Rubino, or do you have somebody online? Okay,
I'm
sounds good.
promoting him now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sounds good. I believe we have the county clerks as well. So we'll do the secretary and then we'll have the clerks after that.
Hello. You guys hear me?
We can, Mr. Secretary. Good to see you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and it's really appreciate being able to testify on non-citizen driver's license and ID card revisions, Bill Draft 259, which addresses some election integrity matters that have been a huge priority of our office and helps us to advance a number of priorities of our office. Appreciate you allowing remote testimony today, traveling around the state. In the room, we have Joe Rubino, our counsel, to also help in answering any questions. I want to thank the committee for this bill draft, which from the perspective of our office and my role as the chief election official for the state of Wyoming, provides a common sense added safeguard to our elections by making designations on credentials issued to non-U.S. citizens who legally obtain that credential by the Wyoming DOT. It makes that much more clear that they are not U.S. citizens, this bill. And I think that's what we're trying to effectuate with this bill. And first, I wanted to note that I am in complete support of clarity concerning efforts to prevent non-citizens from voting. Both the Wyoming Constitution and Wyoming state law are clear that U.S. citizens and only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in Wyoming elections. Last year, our office proposed and adopted rules which would have required two things. One, proof of Wyoming residency when an individual registered to vote, and two, clarity and uniformity concerning providing evidence of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote, particularly that if an individual had what was or is currently a non-resident designation on that credential, that would not be eligible for registering to vote and placing that into our procedures. Unfortunately, these rules were vetoed by the governor, and this issue remains a huge priority of our administration. Now, I anticipate in the county clerk's testimony that they may say that some counties are already rejecting those non-resident designations. The issue in terms of uniformity and in terms of clarity is that is nowhere in our rules, and it is not clear, how uniform that practice is. Now, what I think this bill does is, and this is part of what we were trying to do with our rulemaking as well, it just makes it clearer that when a credential is not issued to a United States citizen, and I agree with the bringer of the motion, originally Representative Pendergraft, the members of the committee, that it could be clearer. Non-resident NR, it could be much clearer. And so I think that's what this bill is trying to do. I'm very supportive of looking at changes in the color. I did just hear the testimony that maybe that isn't possible. I also think some of the portions of the staff comment making it even clearer under the new language that this is not eligible for registering to vote and voting, whether it's voter ID or registering to vote. I think any designation that makes that even clearer, I support. And I think portions of that staff comment do that. While we do have safeguards in place to ensure that only United States citizens are registering to vote, which is called the HAVA check, there are a number of areas where there are weaknesses that can be exposed. And that's why we need to continue to shore up this front end monitoring, which I think this bill draft does. And ultimately what we need is not only the changes in the designation that the bill puts forward, but we also need to make it clear in Wyoming state law that whether it's a non-resident designation, a not a U.S. citizen designation, or anything under it, per the staff comment, that is not allowed for registering to vote, and the state needs to make that clear. And I anticipate some further legislation going through the session that will do that. But I think this is a step in the right direction to make the credential itself clearer in respect to this issue, and I'm very in support of it because I think it moves the ball forward in one of the key priorities of this administration, which is election integrity and ensuring that only citizens and only Wyoming citizens are voting in Wyoming elections. So with that, appreciate the opportunity to comment today and happy to field any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Anybody have any questions for Secretary Gray?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead. We'll go to Representative Wiley. Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us. I hope the roads are good and you're having safe travels. Did you happen to hear the testimony earlier about possibly having like a real-time scan of these cards come up so there is no confusion or anything? You could just scan the card no matter whether it be in a patrol car or at a voting station, and you'll know who these cards are linked to and what these cards are trying to say.
Go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Representative Wiley, and yes, I did hear that portion of the testimony, Mr. Chairman and Representative Wiley, and we're going to continue to look at that. Counties have already been looking at that in association with our office, and that's something that we continue to be interested in. That being said, in rural portions of the state, I really do believe in precinct voting, and I think we also need to think about the card itself. But I think continuing to integrate technology and front-end election integrity measures is something I'm very interested in.
Co-Chairman Round, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, and actually Mr. Rubino may have this information, may be more suited. I'm just curious, one of the questions I have on this is how many non-resident citizens voted in our last election and or in 2022?
Mr. Secretary?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just want to make sure the question is non-citizens, correct?
Non-residents.
Non-residents. So not just non-citizens?
Mm-hmm.
So that would include both. Well, we had a issue in Campbell County in 2020 where an illegal alien voted. That was ultimately not prosecuted, even though we asked the county attorney to prosecute that, and also noted that with the county clerk. The county clerk, we requested that the county clerk remove that individual from the voting rolls. In Wyoming state law, only the county clerk can remove from the voting rolls. So we made that request through our office, and that individual was removed. The reality is that in terms of further potential infractions, we don't know because we don't have front-end protection measures in place like the one that the governor vetoed that we tried to put forward last year. So like when we did voter ID in 2021, we heard a lot from folks that had concerns about the bill saying, well, how many people impersonated an individual at the polls in the last election? Well, the problem with that question is there's no way to know because there's no front-end measure in place. You have to have a front-end measure in place to have that protection. And then that front-end measure in and of itself is a deterrent. And so I think there's a little bit of a circularity in the notion, and excuse me if this isn't part of the predicate of your question, but saying that maybe this isn't an issue right now, we don't know because we don't have enough front-end measures in place. And so it's not just back-end things that are important, it's also front-end measures to provide for verification on situations like this.
Follow-up, Mr. Co-Chairman.
The front-end measure that I'm actually referring to is the NR that is capable of being placed on the driver's license right now. And so I guess if we already have the ability to place NR on the driver's license, as well as the testimony that we've heard from WYDOT about how a credential is issued, that there is no way for a credential to be even issued to somebody without proper documentation, proof of residency, all of those types of information, because they all have to clarify and be in line with the Real ID Act. I'm concerned about going in, issuing, hey, we need to change the color of this or do X, Y, and Z for something that is already in place and is already capable of being done. Can you help me understand how much work the Secretary of State's office has done with WYDOT in investigating this issue?
Go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've met with WYDOT since I've entered office, probably 4 to 5 times, done a number of calls with them. I really enjoy working with driver services, by the way. Don't agree with them on everything, but they've been really solid to work with on this issue, which has been one of our key priorities. One of the issues and one of the things I want to address in the 25 session is there's really no tracking measure when somebody comes up in a have a check and doesn't qualify. It doesn't ping our office back. It's just a message, and then the county clerk is supposed to not proceed. And so I don't have a way of keeping track of, this office does not have a way currently of keeping track of that data, which is something that we've been looking to address in 25 maintenance. Now, I've asked many times the county clerks informally to notify our office anytime there is an NR designation that is caught in a registration in person, whether it's on the day of the election or early voting, to notify my office when there is a have a check that pulls up that somebody is a non-citizen, and that individual obviously is then not allowed to proceed with the registration, any of those situations. And really have not received much communication on that. I've heard, for example, I had somebody tell me secondhand that an illegal alien had attempted to vote in Natrona County and the have a check caught that. I then asked that clerk the following day, and she did confirm that. But so far, it's been secondhand things that I've heard and then following up with the clerk. I've asked the clerks many times to report every single instance when that happens. I actually sent another letter on that recently in regards to the entry of same-day registrations. They have 30 days in a non-e-poll book county to enter same-day registrations after the election. So that's occurring right now in counties. So that's something that we're continuing to work on. I want to have a registration system where there's a notification, a ping back, so that we can have that data, and then also notify law enforcement. Because that's an issue as well.
Okay, looks like we have another follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate everything that you just mentioned there, Secretary Gray. Not once did you answer my question about the NR doing the designation and what more this is going to protect when we already have front-end discussions. So I'm really trying to figure out how us changing the color of a driver's license for a non-resident versus having NR is going to change any of what you just talked about with the county clerks. Can you please help me understand why we need to have this bill to identify non-residents differently than we already do?
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Secretary. It sounds like there might be some slight distinction between immigration status that would show up differently with this. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the NR does is it designates an individual who may be here, say, on a guest worker program or something like that, but is not a United States citizen. So obviously they are not eligible to vote. And so that's why it's very important that this is very notable on the credential. Now, in answer to your question, Chairman Brown, again, to get down to the base level, what I think it does is it makes it clearer. I mean, I was traveling the state throughout the election cycle, traveling the state on the day of the election here in Cheyenne. We had long lines. There was a lot going on. Our election judges did a great job, but there's a lot of throughput. And the NR is not as prominent as I think it should be. And I think that's where Representative Pendergraft was going with his bill draft motion. And it's also kind of unclear. NR is I don't think, specific enough. I mean, the reality is the person is not a United States citizen, which means they cannot register to vote. And so in terms of the training materials from the counties in regards to this situation, the fact that there are, so much activity on the election day and we have same-day registration, I think for many reasons, it is very important to make this even clearer. And so I think making it clear is a step forward. And I think saying, look, this means that a person is not a United States citizen rather than NR, which frankly, until I got a whole lecture from DOT on what exactly that meant, it was kind of up in the air. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I think not a United States citizen is much clearer on the credential than the way it reads currently. And I think some of the staff comment words about not eligible for registering to vote, something along those lines, will make it even clearer for the election judges who have a difficult task on the day of the election. And especially with the fact that we have same-day registration and in terms of administering the code and the uniform compliance with the election code, which is one of the key duties of my office, I think that ensures that uniform compliance, especially on the day of the election at the polling place on same-day registrations.
Okay, any further questions for the Secretary? Okay, looks like there's no further. Thank you, sir. Drive safe.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Great to see everybody. Hope everyone's doing well.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Okay, any further, looks like, okay, so we're done with that. We'll bring in the county clerks. Is Ms. Langford on there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor of representing the County Clerks Association of Wyoming. Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely today. The county clerks appreciate the committee's concern about identifying non-citizens on driver's licenses and ID cards for the purposes of voter registration. This would be especially helpful for Election Day voter registrations at the polls where e-poll books are not in use and WyoReg is not available. To be clear, Wyoming County clerks very rarely have non-citizens attempt to register to vote. A publicized case of a non-citizen registering to vote and voting in Campbell County would not have been stopped even if this bill were in law, because that person had a passport issued by the U.S. government. We believe there may be a more robust approach to addressing the concern of non-citizens and non-residents attempting to register to vote. In discussing with WYDOT and understanding their system modernization project, which will be live in 2025, we will have the ability to capture real-time data on a potential voter's citizenship and residency status. This would not require a statutory change, just a successful modernization project and some collaboration between Wyoming County Clerks and WYDOT. After the modernization project is completed, WYDOT has indicated they will be able to provide access to county clerks' offices who will be able to see the real-time data collected by WYDOT, which includes their residence address and citizenship. A Wyoming citizen can update their address online with WYDOT, but that update will not be immediately available on the physical license. Being able to access the most up-to-date data from WYDOT will benefit registrars in determining whether a challenge of a potential voter is warranted. The good news is that there is no statewide election scheduled for 2025. With the modernization project projected for completion in 2025, this allows us to troubleshoot a solution prior to the 2026 election cycle. We understand the concern of non-citizens attempting to register to vote. After all, only Wyoming citizens should be voting in Wyoming elections. We agree and support means to achieve those ends. As such, we will continue to work with WYDOT to ensure these tools are in place prior to the 2026 election. In conclusion, participation in the WYDOT system modernization project would provide up-to-date citizenship and residency information without the redesign of the current cards. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in this discussion today, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Langford, appreciate it. Any discussion or questions? Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At a situation where someone comes in to vote and you're asked to present an ID, do typically at those polling places, do the clerks there have the type of technology there to read the scans that we're talking about, or they just simply look at the cards as they exist now?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergast, today, they only can look at the cards. We don't have the ability to do any scanning, but it's our understanding that with the modernization project, that scanning ability will be available to us.
Okay, go ahead, Representative Wiley.
Hi, thank you. And this is going to be available at the end of this modernization process to all counties within Wyoming.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, that's our understanding, and WYDOT can reassure you of that.
And follow up based off that, what hardware would be required on your end in order to make that a reality? I imagine you have some sort of internet connectivity and some ability to scan, is that correct? And so just wondering what you're considering, especially in some of the more remote areas, what would it take from the clerk's end to make sure that you have access to that capability?
Mr. Chairman, with a little help from WYDOT on this, we do have connectivity. In some spots, as you know, we all live in some places we live pretty remotely, but we should be able to accommodate that with interoperability with their system and with ours. And again, as time goes on, our connectivity gets better.
Go ahead, you have something there.
Chairman Boner, with our modernization project, it also comes an online portal. This is in the early phases of talking through this when we visited earlier this week. My intent is to sort of create an organizational portal for each of the county clerks so that they could literally type in a driver's license number and it would return current address on file with the department and permanent resident status, either U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or temporary. That's kind of our it wouldn't require any additional scanners. It would only require a computer, an internet connection.
Gotcha. And so just going to go back to clerks, it's your intent to have that be uniform practice where if, say, somebody comes in to register their vote, you're going to take the time to, check the ID, type it into the computer, and is that going to be a standard practice? Is that the plan, Ms. Langford?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's what actually happens now. If you were to go into the clerk's office where we have access to WildReg, it's going to be just the same process, only it will be at the polling place on election day. and it'll work the same.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Technology is, in fact, an amazing, wonderful thing when it works. Wyoming has a lot of remote places. Wyoming has a lot of polling places that some sort of connection to technology might be iffy. If for some reason we lose signal, we lose Wi-Fi, whatever it is at the polling place, do we just shut down the polling place? I think the redundancy here of having a physical as well as an electronic means is a wise move.
Okay, didn't hear a question there, but that's okay. It's okay, yeah, that's good, yeah. Okay, any further questions? All right, thank you, appreciate it, Mary, good to see you. Okay, do we have anybody else online? Looks like we may have had somebody else that wants to do online testimony. Okay. All right, sounds good. Any in-person testimony? Okay, going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Furphy. Seconded by Representative Berger, sounds like. Okay. Any discussion on this bill? Any amendments? It's pretty straightforward here. One thing we may have to consider is the time frame. And Director, I guess if that's okay, you or one of your staff, do you have a suggestion if July 1st is going to be tough to do, what would be a better date? I guess I'll just ask that right now.
Mr. Chairman, at a minimum, January 1st, that would be the probably best of 26.
Okay, January 1st, 26. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, go, I've got a question for you, Representative Smith, or somebody. You want to? Yeah.
Just a couple questions, because how many different NRs are out there on our IDs? Like, is it a couple hundred, couple thousands?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Smith, Senator Kolb had asked the same question, and I'll get that information back to the committee so I can have the exact numbers for you on both the driver license and identification cards.
Okay, and then the other question is, how many different state issue IDs does your supplier issue for Wyoming? Like, I know we have our driver's license, you do an ID card versus the driver's license, and then concealed carry permits look identical to the driver's license. Is there other varieties of different types of cards that get issued?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Smith, so the two credentials that are required by law are the identification card and the driver's license card. There are other specialty ID cards that YDOT has been tasked to do. Concealed carry on arms permit is one of those. Employee state ID cards. We do all the peace officer cards. We do cards for the division of DCI as well as WHP. So the statutory requirement is simply the driver's license and the state issued identification card, which is Real ID compliant. Everything past that is just additional tasks that we've taken on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick couple of questions. On the upper left-hand corner of a new driver's license is a script that says something about Wyoming. What color is that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, the driver's license is blue and the identification card is red.
Okay, thank you. If it's possible to do one in blue and one in red, how much more difficult would it be to do one in green or orange?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, it would cause a complete redesign of the card. We talked about that earlier. Each of those cards is a layer. Each of those things in that card is a layer of different color. So anything that you see that's a color on that card is embedded in the actual card itself. So to change that, we'd have to redesign that piece of that card.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Okay, we'll do Senator Kolb and Mr. Kocher. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After Mr. Rossetti, or, excuse me, sorry. A question, we've discussed NR quite a bit. How large is NR on said driver's license? Is it the same size as the number? I mean, can you give me some help there to understand the size of this?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, it's the exact same, it is actually included in the class of license, so it says C-NR. So it's the exact same size as the class that's listed on your driver's license.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other question was, I think you said it was about $12,000 for a redesign for the software. Is that correct? I mean, what would it actually cost to do this, like to come up with a new color on the card itself?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I can't give you that answer. What the numbers that I gave you earlier were the variables for the different things that we've gotten information provided us to us by our vendor. But any type of redesign would have to go through a change request with our vendor, and they would provide that information to us at that point. So typically, anywhere from, we've had some varying changes, right? With $6,400 to do the back of the CF concealed firearms permit last year, up to $25,000 to add the medical alert in 2019.
Mr. Co-Chairman. Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, sorry. I believe that the $12,000, if I remember correctly, when we did one of those was, you guys were already in the process. And so this was a simple, and I actually remember this. I remember Mr. Rossetti was testifying on this saying, hey, look, we can do this. And this is actually a really good thing because we're in the process of getting ready to do this. Now that we have an established ID card, it's not as simple as going in there and saying, hey, look, we're going to go do this. This is a complete redesign from beginning to end, and everybody's cards would then be redesigned at that point. Is that right? And then I have a follow-up after that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman, that's correct. So when we were looking at the 12.5 for the medical alert, that was because we were in the middle of a redesign of our card. It varies. If you're talking about changing the color, that's one thing. If you're talking about changing the personalization, that's a separate thing. So ultimately, we are at the mercy of our vendor when you talk about card design. And then we are also very near the end of the contract with our existing vendor. So we may have to do this twice. So just looking at that as well.
Mr. Chairman, last follow-up. The NR that we have on there, can we change that to CV to where people would understand that they can't vote? And I'm being dead serious here. Can we change out the two letters and have it be something as simple as that? Because it seems to be that what I'm hearing from the Secretary of State's office is they're concerned that this is not clear enough. The NR, non-resident, doesn't give the clarity. If we put something on there that says CV, that makes it super clear in my books. But is that a doable change?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, anything is possible. Do I know what it will cost or whether it will change things, or if I can't answer that question. You can change it, but then in the next, will everybody understand what CV is? Not sure. It's simply as we walk through this process, I think that allowing you guys to make this policy decision is totally up to date, but I do think that there is an avenue that we can look at and try and make this happen in a manner that is suitable for everybody.
Last question I
Okay,
have.
one more, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. So assuming this passes, will you be able to have that information for us as a rough estimate? Will you guys be able to contact your vendor to find out what some of these options, what some of these things may look like, so we have a better understanding of what some of these costs may be incurred if we decide to redesign our driver's license again?
Mr. Co-Chairman, if this bill passes, I will go to our existing vendor that we have today and get a change request put together and see what that cost is. That would be the only way that I would be able to give you a real number, which would be available at that point.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, in prior testimony, didn't you say anything that was in black that you could change? So on a driver's license, there's room above there to put non-citizen in black, correct? Would that be a hard thing to do?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, I believe that's what this bill is asking for, right?
What I'm asking is, if we don't change the colors, and like it says driver's license, non-citizen driver's license, and it just says in black, non-citizen, then you don't have to change the color and do all that. It's just adding one little line. Is that doable?
Again, it would require, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Again, it would require the change in our personalization process, adding that information. Anytime you add or remove any color, any black, anything, it requires the redesign of our personalization process or our card design.
Okay. Thank you. And we brought you up to ask about effective dates, and we all of a sudden, I think you've become a proxy for the discussion we should be having as a committee. So thank you. I'm sorry about that. So, okay, we're talking about amendments. And we heard some concerns about the effective date. Just wondering if that's something that we want to consider or anything else in the bill. So this is a chance to have discussion or offer amendments committee. Representative Pendergraft.
Mr. Chairman, a question. Was there a motion on the table to change the date?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
No, we're on the bill.
I would move then to change the color of the script, the Wyoming script, the top left of the ID card, to a unique color and to place at the top of the identification card or driver's license, non-citizen, those words. So that it went say non-citizen driver's license, and instead of a blue Wyoming script, it would be orange. Something like that.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, so make sure I understand you're changing both the color of the currently blue Wyoming logo on the top left-hand side, and the same color would be used to say non-citizen. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm having difficulty grasping why we can't change a text on a line when, for example, I get my driver's license printed, it's going to say Kenneth Pendergraft. The next person, we don't have to redesign the whole card to put their name and photograph on it. So I'm not comfortable that this is that hard. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Pappas.
Yeah, either way, the card is going to have to be redesigned because it needs another line. They're not just changing your name, they're adding another line. And I don't understand, if we're going to redesign it, I don't understand why we need to change the color when we're going to just add a line that says non-citizen. I don't think we need both. I don't understand the reason for both. I would just add the other line and be done with it.
And I think the point of the testimony we heard is that if you change the color, that's an additional cost above the redesign. And so that's, hopefully that makes it clear. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recognize that. I'm just thinking about sitting there as a voter judge, and you're watching cards come by you, one after the other, and they all look the same, you see the same thing, and then all of a sudden one comes up in a different color. That's a mental flag. Whereas the text that is written there, not so much. But for clarity, when the color pops up, this is really weird, I haven't seen one of these, and then you look at it more closely, it says, oh, non-citizen. That's the direction I'm headed.
Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Representative Wiley.
if we go that far into a full redesign anyway, let's just change the whole background to orange, so it's blatantly out there, bang, there it is.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. It looks like that motion fails. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, just curious, and I'm sorry, we did pepper poor Ms. Zimmerman with questions beyond belief. The official date, maybe you wrote it down that we need to change. I'm willing to make that motion. I believe it was to July 1st, 2026. Is that right?
January 1st.
January 1st, I'm sorry. So I'll make that motion in both conforming, I guess we only need to do it in one location. Is that right? For the.
Yeah, I want to say it's probably page 4, line 7, if that's correct.
That's what I'm
That's it.
thinking, yeah.
Everything else is.
Everything else should be good.
Effective dates.
Yep.
And rules and everything. But-
Okay, yeah, so I will make that motion,
But I
page
want to
4,
make sure
line
that's
7.
correct with the department and. Oh, yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
There's a lot of dates on this, and
Yeah,
it's
so we
getting
have-
late on a Friday afternoon.
Okay, so there's effective date, there's a rulemaking date. You have to have a deadline for rulemaking, and then there's a date at which you actually start issuing the licenses. And so those are 3 separate things. That's a good question of what Does it just need to be the actual issuing of the cards?
Do you have enough time to get everything else squared away?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Brown, I think looking at the concern, I see, Section 2, the act shall apply to licenses and identification cards issued after. We wouldn't be able to issue the card until at least January, so you'd need to change that one in Section 2 to January of 2026. And then not later than in Section 3. We could work those rules. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to have that rule in place until January 1st of 2026 either. So I think in both places there, it makes some sense. And then Section 4, probably for conformance, it would make some sense to make it there. So I think all three places would probably become January 1.
All right, so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And seconds, okay? Is that additional detail? Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, so it's pretty clear, hopefully, changing everything to January 1st, 2026. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Any further discussion on this bill? Any further amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, just a little bit of discussion, and I'll make it very brief. I understand exactly what we're trying to do here, totally understand this. I did hear this a few times out on the campaign trail as well. In my opinion, this was not a request of Management Council. This was not an interim topic assigned to us. This was not something that was brought to us. This is well outside the wheelhouse that we're trying to fix something when it comes to voting, and we're going to completely redesign and tell YDOT to go fix something that we can do within our rules, and we're already in that process, so I will be a no vote.
Any further discussion? Okay, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the issue for me is the constituents. I think we have to have as much confidence in the system with the constituents. It's not to say that I think, this is a necessary thing at that level, but I believe that's irrelevant in this case. What's relevant is what people think. And I think whatever we can do to make them have confidence in our system is what we need to do. So I'll be a yes vote.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
This is a roll call vote for 25 LSO 0259, non-citizen driver's license and ID card revisions as amended. Senator Brennan?
No.
Senator Furphy?
Aye.
Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
No.
Representative Obermueller?
No.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Representative Wiley? Co-Chairman Brown? Chairman Boner? 10 aye, 4 no.
Okay, thank you very much. It is 2:27, so we'll just go ahead and press forward with the last bill that we have here before us, 25 LSO-256. Go ahead, Ms. Hanson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 256, version 0.5, unpaved roads, speed limits amendments. This bill draft was requested at the committee's September meeting. Section 1 begins on page 1, lines 9 and 10, by amending the statute dealing with local authorities' ability to establish maximum speed limits. Page 2, lines 4 through 16, amends subsection B by stating that the department shall not promulgate rules that require a speed study before a local authority establishes a maximum speed limit for unpaved roads in accordance with subsection F of this section. Page 2, lines 18 through 23 creates a new subsection F, which provides that a local authority may establish a maximum speed limit of not less than 45 miles per hour, but not more than 55 miles per hour for unpaved roadways without first conducting a speed study or providing justification for the maximum speed limit. Section 2 on page 3, lines 2 and 3 require the Department of Transportation to promulgate any rules necessary to implement this act. Section 3 on page 3, lines 5 through 13 provides a split effective date, with section 1 being effective July 1st, 2025, and sections 2 and 3 being effective immediately. I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions on the drafting of this bill? Okay, thank you, Talise. Director, there you go, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Darren Westby, Director of Wyoming Department of Transportation with me. Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer. I think, don't want to rehash all the testimony that we had in the last meeting. I thought it went well, and I also want to commend and thank the LSO for the working draft. I think it clearly defines exactly what was discussed at the last meeting when the request was made. And I can stand for any questions. I think, I'm not sure, did this get passed out? Okay. Mark is very precise in his language and very precise in reading law. And while we were toiling over the bill, it says everything that was described. Mark, just as he was reading it, said we can reword it just a little bit differently, just to make it more clear on that. And so what you see on that, some of the proposed amendments are just that. I think as written, it will be legal and it will be just. I think to get the true point across as to when we're going to do a speed study, when we're not, the proposed amendment just makes it just that much more clear when we're doing it, when we're not. And then, and all it is basically moving the when a speed study is required up to the top of that F as opposed to being at the bottom. So you read that after you read the language. And so that was the first proposed amendment. And the second one, and I'm not sure if it's on here, but reading through the bill on page 2, lines 13 through 16, the added language there, I guess I would like to know just a little bit more. Maybe it's an LSO question, why that's necessary. Basically, if it's in statute as described in F, we will have to change our rules. We can't really have rules that are directly against statute. And so, again, it's fine being in there. I just don't want to add more language to a statute that's already kind of lengthy. And for that, we would stand for any questions unless you have anything to add, Mark.
Okay. Well, appreciate that, Director, and hopefully everybody has those amendments in front of you. And I think that is some of the feedback that I got, which said having belt and suspenders is good most of the time, but sometimes it can be confusing, I guess, if you get too many of them in one spot. So hopefully that clarifies. I know there was some concern. I'm sure we'll hear testimony from the counties too, to make sure everything we're all communicating well. So any questions for WYDOT? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going through this, I came up with a simple thought, and I just wondered what your opinions was. Why wouldn't we allow the counties, I mean, I'm just proposing a change or a thought on a change, what your opinion is. Why wouldn't we allow the counties to have authority to grant a speed limit up to 55 miles an hour? And this is without a speed study. And I don't know why we have the minimum speed in there, the 35. The issue is this, that these speed limits that we're talking about are most, understood by the local authorities. They understand the roads, they understand what it means, to the citizens in that area. So if we granted the Board of County Commissioners an authority to have that leeway, they would set an appropriate speed limit for that road. Now, that's with the thought in mind that I don't care what you say a speed limit is. People are going to go down that road at whatever speed, right? And if they're not exercising caution at whatever road they're traveling on, when the conditions change, it's going to be, hazardous. So I don't know why we wouldn't let the Board of County Commissioners do this. I don't know. They know the roads better than any of us here, and any of you actually know they know those roads best. So I don't know what the downside is of just letting them have that leeway, that authority to set that number. And I was curious to hear what you thought about that idea, like why. Tell me why it's a bad thing, if you could, to let them have that authority. What's the downside? That's my question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'll let Chief talk about some of the MUTCD, the acronym's correct, and the CFRs, the federal CFRs that kind of push the requirement for a professional engineer to grant the speed, height or low on a speed limit. So I'll let him discuss that. From our perspective, they do have the ability to raise and lower their speed limits. It's just with a speed study. I mean, it needs to be analyzed to ensure that the safety is appropriate for the road. And that's set up by ensuring that there's a professional engineer that's going to stamp that and put that reliability or safety and responsibility on them. All counties, I should say most counties, have a licensed engineer, either on retainer or on staff that can do that. I know we put into a pot over at the University of Wyoming to help offset their costs on performing the speed studies. So University of Wyoming will go perform the speed study. So it's very little out-of-pocket costs. It's a time thing, probably more than anything for them. And so those are the things that I know, at least in talking with a lot of the counties and a lot of the commissioners out there. But per the legalities of it, maybe Mark, you can expand upon some of your thoughts on MUTCD.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name's Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer with WYDOT. I think the director summed it up pretty well. Two words come to my mind: safety and consistency. And so the reason that the MUTCD exists is so that there is consistency across the country, across the states, et cetera. And then within that document, they do require a speed study be done whenever you want to change a speed limit from the statutory speed. And the reason for that is again, consistency and safety for the motorists, and especially, I think, when you cross one line of a county into another county, that the driver, even though the road may not change much, has that feeling of, okay, this county will be consistent with the one I just came from. I'll just keep driving the way I have been.
Any further questions? Senator Colby, you got a follow-up?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Well, it comes down to, in practicalities speak, first off, CFRs, federal regulations, I don't know what that has to do with us in the state of Wyoming, where we do have sovereignty. I think that's number one that comes to my mind. But more than that, the reality is that when you drive on an unimproved two-track dirt road and you're going down the highway and say it's posted at 55, I assure you, there's no road that the entire road, it has 55 on it, say in our county, is safe to corner at 55. So I would profess to you that that gives people an unrealistic view of the speed they can travel on that road. Goes back to the fact that I can't fix carelessness. We post things in good faith. The commission, I was a commissioner for 8 years. I well know what this means. We have more county roads in Sweetwater than I think in the whole, in any other county in the state. And people understand they're driving on a road, and if you post 55 in Sweetwater County, they're posted 55. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I can assure you, we have a PE, great guy, who's our county road engineer. But we can't guarantee you can drive 55 throughout the whole thing. I mean, I understand, but this is not Interstate 80. We're talking about unimproved dirt roads in a county with thousands of miles of dirt roads. And I still go back to the fact that the Board of County Commissioners know those roads. And if there's a safety hazard out there, why wouldn't they be allowed to post speed, say it's 35 miles an hour because it's not a very good road? Doesn't have, it's just not a very good road. Why wouldn't they be allowed to do that? I mean, what are we talking about CFRs for? Federal regulations. I get it in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world. So I just like that, I mean, the reality is, how do we kind of, split this baby? We're talking about that we're not going to have to have speed studies. So we're already going against what we were doing before. The question is just how far are we going to go? I just wonder why, and I guess I'm still convinced that I don't know what we're doing by pretending we're putting up a speed limit sign and not having it safe at that speed. I can assure you, it changes, gets wet, whatever be the case. And that's the reality on the ground, not in a book and not in some seminar national group. That's what we deal with here in Wyoming. So once again, I go back to my question, why can't we allow them to have the variance or the latitude to decide for themselves what is a safe speed for their county? And maybe I'm beating a dead horse. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, feel free to, I guess, have a different answer, slightly different answer. So it sounds like it was the same question, but go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that is a policy decision for you folks to make. I don't really have any further comment on that.
Representative Overman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, the range here in this bill, 45 to 55, do you have a sense of how many county roads sort of fit into that model, as far as how much we're actually eliminating within in that framework, how much of that oversight and study we'd be eliminating by carving out 45 to 55?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, and I'll take the first swing on this one. I don't think we do. That'd be a great question for some of the counties if they want to step in. And I guess to kind of elaborate a little bit more on Chief's comment that it is a policy decision, we're fine with it. If the counties are willing to accept the responsibility of raising and lowering the speed limits on their county roads, and that's a policy decision that you and the counties can determine.
Any further questions for Representative Brennan? Senator Brennan, I'm sorry. So sorry.
That's all good. Correct me if I'm wrong, but do you guys have a process that the counties can come to you if they want the speed limit changed and that they can go through currently? Does that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Senator, sure. They can come to us or they can go directly to the university. And there's a program over there where they can do those studies for them. As the director mentioned, we pay into that, help pay for that. So the counties do have a avenue there.
Okay, any further questions, Representative O'Harn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the whole point of this is to not pay for the speed study, right? So it gives the county commissioners the liability or the flexibility of saying, hey, between 0 and 100, let's pick 50 miles an hour on this thing. That keeps consistent. And that's the whole reason of this bill, correct? Try to give the county the flexibility of not doing a speed study.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, between 45 and 55, correct. And I think to Senator Kolb's comment is, why put the lower version on that? Right now, I believe in statute, unpaved roads, there's a maximum speed limit set by statute that says that it will be 55. And so anything, for the most part, all county roads could be 55 miles an hour. To go below that, it requires a speed study, and that's exactly what this bill does, is between 45 and 55, they don't have to perform a speed study. The county can just, through their engineer, say, I choose to make this 45 without a speed study. But if they're, to Senator Kolb's comment, what if they wanted to make it 35? Well, then they would have to do a speed study. So part of his comment is definitely valid in the conversation. Our concern is just consistency standpoint. And there's a lot to this, and I'm learning this. I'm an engineer. I'm mechanical by degree, civil by license, didn't design a highway. But what I am learning is there's a lot of things that go into raising a speed limit, lowering a speed limit on, to Senator Cole's comment about, people are gonna travel to what they're gonna travel. Well, that's what the speed study does. It finds out what the normal speed limit, or not the limit, normal speed of travel. How much do people feel comfortable traveling on this section of road? And that changes a lot of things. So you start thinking about intersections. Well, if the sign is posted at 55 and the speed travel that normal people travel are 65, and you don't post it at 65, people in your head, when you're at that intersection, you're going, well, all right, this is a 55-mile-an-hour road. That car's quarter mile out. I should be able to get onto this intersection and get up to speed before that person takes up on me. If people are traveling 65 on a 55 and you pull out, well, you just lost that 10-mile-an-hour gap. And that's where a lot of the safety comes into play. And that's what I'm learning. I can go into crosswalks, I can go into stoplights, I can go into flashing signs, non-flashing signs, everything that can impact the traveling public. And if everybody's following the law, it all works. When somebody's not following the law, it kind of throws things into a confusion state that could create a safety issue. And so that's what I think Mark was trying to get across. But I think the county engineers are obviously very intelligent people that can make some of those determinations if they feel comfortable in doing so. I know there's a lot of engineers that when they see this, they'll also say, I probably still will do a speed study because I want to make sure that what I'm stamping is not going to inherently put somebody else at risk. Some of them, they'll say, yes, this is a 35-mile-an-hour road or a 45-mile-an-hour road, and everybody travels it because it's really not great. And so there's just a lot to it. But yes, to answer your question really quickly, that's exactly what this bill is trying to get to.
Any further questions for WIDOT? Go ahead, Representative Wyden.
Just to kind of touch base onto what Representative O'Hearn was talking about, what if we just remove the 55 mile an hour requirement and then let the purview go to the counties and pick whatever they, see fit on unpaved roads?
Chairman. What I would see with that is if you, and I'm assuming you're asking if we just throw out the statutory speed limit of 55. If you do that, then in order to enforce anything, you would have to post all the roads. A statutory speed limit does not need to have a posting or a sign out there. Anything other than that, you need to put a sign out there in order to enforce it. If you take that away, there would be no statutory speed limit, then to me, you would have to post all your roads to what the speed limit is.
Any further questions for WIDOT? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it. I'll have the county commissioners come up next, if that's all right. Welcome, please introduce yourselves for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jonathan Russell with the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I want to begin by first thanking WYDOT and Mr. Gillette for conversations that we have. We appreciate that, and we know they have the best of intentions, and we appreciate that as well, and just the work that they're doing. And I also appreciate the comments that Senator Cole made as well. He beat me to the punch on a lot of things. And so when we reached out to our members, the main thing that we received back in a reply was that they would like to have the authority to lower the speed limit. And that number was 35 miles an hour. They understand the purpose of the speed studies. Sometimes those speed studies come back with a higher speed than what they were wanting on a particular road. Also, the cost and the length of time that a speed study takes is of concern as well. But the main concern was the ability to lower that speed limit if they see fit. And the reason for that is, and going back to our September meeting in Laramie, the term, local design or the local feel of what the members of the board, the road superintendents, the road and bridge, and those commissioners, that local knowledge that they have of roads that they feel should be lowered is what they're looking at. They know they have many roads at 45 miles an hour, and that's fine, but there are some that they feel should be lowered in their opinion. Any questions, I'm willing to take.
Any questions from the commissioners? Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, appreciate your comments. Having a latitude, a spectrum of speeds, because I agree with you. There's times that it needs to be 30 miles an hour, for goodness sake. I mean, what do you see a problem with having latitude up to 55 miles an hour as the Board of County Commissioners just determine is a safe travel speed for a particular road within their county boundaries? What are your thoughts on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, so as far as your spectrum question, they understand the need for different speed limits on roads. But again, the lower speed limit is the biggest concern to them when it comes to whatever the road is. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This follow-up. My question is obviously, if you have the ability to have a lower speed limit, I mean, that sounds like what you're after. My question, the converse to that, is to have the upper 55, to have that variable. Of course, you would have the ability to say it's 35 miles an hour, whatever you see fit. To have a range there, because my counties is a lot faster. We have a lot faster roads, but it would allow you to do what you're asking for. And I guess the question is, do you care if you can go up to 55 if so determined by the Board of County Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, they don't care. That would fit within what they're saying to us.
Any further questions for the county commissioners? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Any further public comment? Anybody online? Okay. Going once, going twice, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Cole. Seconded by Representative Wiley. Any discussion? Amendments? Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would propose, this bill's kind of gotten a little bit cumbersome with different things in front of us. But I would start off on page 2, line 19. After the word of, limit of, after that, insert 55 miles per hour, period. Strike it down to page 2, line 20, when it goes for unpaved. Start a new sentence or continue the thought for unpaved roadways under Wyoming section 315-301B 4. And then my next part of the amendment would be page 2, line 21, after 315-301B 4, period, and strike. Yeah, this is where I got a little messy here. Try to clean the language up where it says without first conducting a speed study, without conducting a speed study. And we might move that to a more proper place so it flows. But the gist of it is to set a maximum speed up to 55 miles an hour and not to have a speed study associated with that choice by the Board of County Commissioners. That would be my intent, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to rework this if I need to, sir.
Okay, so if I understand the intent here is just say if you can set the speed limit anywhere between 0 and 55 miles an hour without a study. Okay, is that correct? All right, and so then that, in my mind, that I have a question as to how that works with the rest of the statute that may not be in the bill right now, where we do have kind of the standard for unpaved roads at 55 miles an hour. And so I'm wondering what would be the effect if we just struck paragraph B altogether? If that'd have the, that'd achieve a similar effect. I'm assuming if we do that, there's still a requirement. If, say, they want to make it above 55 miles an hour, they'd have to go through some sort of process. But I don't know, because it's not really in the bill, so.
Well, maybe, Mr. Chairman, I'd maybe ask the LSO to see if that's the right way to wordsmith this, get to that intent.
Right, and so either YDOT or LSO, sorry to put you on the spot here, but I guess need to understand, is it possible for, say, a county commission to go above 55 miles an hour for an unpaved road? And what's the process look like?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, so you would want there to have to require a speed study if you wanted to go above 55, but not if you wanted to go below 55?
Correct.
Okay, I think he might be able to help, but I think if you just struck the of not less than 45 miles per hour, then that would allow you to set the maximum speed limit of not more than 55 without conducting a speed study, and then you could leave the rest of it. But I'll defer to YDOT.
Go ahead, Mr. Gillette, you want to take a stab at it?
Yes, that would be correct. They can, local authorities can set maximum speed limits. So county could set a higher speed limit than 55, but it would take a speed study to do so, the way it is currently.
And that is dependent upon paragraph B is still existing?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. That helps, okay. I think Ms. Hanson kind of got a good path forward there, so, okay.
That's what I meant, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I think we all understand the intent, so any discussion, committee, clear as mud? All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think it's been seconded, so we're still good. Any discussion on the policy discussion? So are we just going to let the county commissioners set anywhere up to 55 miles an hour without requiring a study? That's the question. So any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, that motion carries. Any further discussion? Sounds like there's some more, I guess, technical suggestions by YDOT. I don't know if we want to take that into account. For example, let's look like the new language, page 2, lines 13 through 16 perhaps is redundant. I think that may have been the concern. I don't know if, especially that the counties who are going to be reading the statute, I don't know if they have an opinion on that or no. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion, committee? Okay. With that, no further discussion. We'll go and do a roll call.
This is a roll call vote for 25 LSO 0256, unpaved roads, speed limit amendments as amended. Senator Brennan?
No.
Senator Furphy? Aye. Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
No.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Representative Wiley?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Brown?
No.
Chairman Boner?
Aye.
11 aye, 3 no.
Okay, I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda, everybody. Any further questions, comments, snide remarks? Okay, last chance for some of you. Once again, just want to recognize the folks who are going to be leaving the legislature, because there will be your last meeting. Representative O'Hearn, Senator Furphy, Representative Berger, Representative Nemec, thank you so much for your service. It's been an honor serving with you. the past 2 years on this committee. And, Obermiller, so sorry, Representative Obermiller, yeah, by all means, so sorry, I thought I had them all. But, and this is your chance, anybody wants some final words of wisdom, okay, Representative Berger, go ahead.
Thank you, and it's been an honor serving with all of you. It's just learned so much and appreciate everybody. It's the friendships at first, when the speaker and leadership says, oh, you're gonna meet a lot of people, and they're right. The friendships will last, and it's great to know all of you, and it's awesome to meet all of you and hear about your families, and thank you again, and best of luck and continue forward, and again, it's been an honor to serve with all of you. It's awesome.
Representative Obermiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank both chairmen for running a real quality committee here this year. I really enjoyed being on this committee. And as for the 8 years, I would highly recommend people stepping up to do this kind of service. It's a tremendous learning curve. You learn so much and meet people from around the state. So it's a little bit of a bittersweet departure for those reasons. So thank you very much.
Chairman Boner. Thank you. Jerry and I were walking around the chamber this morning. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building, great state. Gonna miss it. And I'm gonna stay in the state, but I'll miss all of you guys. It's the people, like Ryan mentioned. I'll see you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm just going to repeat what the other guys have said. Going to miss the time here. I've learned a lot, and I thank all of you guys that have taken on leadership positions. You've put in a lot of work, and this committee and other committees, so thank you for what you guys have done. Thanks.
I just want to thank everyone. I really enjoyed this committee. I think we had a good time. The friendships can go on forever. Thank you.
Sorry, not getting rid of me so soon, but I just wanted to thank the committee and all the people, the friendships that I've developed, and, working with this group. And it's been something I won't forget. As we'll probably be moving on different committees and things, but I just wanted to say I appreciate whether I agree or disagree. I really like working with you and look forward to working with you in the future. And then to the chairman, I'd like to thank them because I don't think anyone knows how much work they put into this stuff. All the work that goes on before you get to these meetings. There's a lot of things that happen that you probably just don't really know about. And I just like to thank you for the time you've put into it also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will do this. Thank you to you ladies over there from LSO. You guys work your tails off, and we appreciate it.
Just one last one, a specific shout out to Ms. Hanson for putting up with my lack of responding to emails over the past 2 years as chairman. So thank you, Ms. Hanson, and thank you again, LSO. You guys have been awesome. Again, to the committee, thank you guys. You guys have made this a pleasure. Director, I think you're my 5th director I've seen in this position now. It's been a learning curve with each individual director, and looking forward to seeing what you do. As you continue this path forward, you've got a big ship to steer, so you're doing a good job so far. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, looks like we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.